On June 12, 2025, the precarious quiet of the Middle East was shattered by a series of decisive and targeted strikes. Israel, acting on what it described as an existential threat, launched a significant military operation against Iran's nuclear program. This was not a minor skirmish but a calculated, large-scale assault designed to cripple Tehran's long-held atomic ambitions. The world watched, holding its breath, as news of the attacks rippled across the globe. This event matters profoundly because it directly confronts the most pressing proliferation challenge of our time. It forces a critical question. Can military force alone prevent a determined nation from acquiring the ultimate weapon? The answer will shape regional stability and global security for years to come. The timing of Israel's action was no accident. It came just days before diplomatic talks between Iran and the United States were set to resume, suggesting a deep Israeli mistrust in the diplomatic process. For years, Jerusalem has warned that it would not allow Iran to cross the nuclear threshold. Recent intelligence, perhaps coupled with a damning report from the International Atomic Energy Agency that highlighted unresolved questions about Iran's program, likely convinced Israeli leaders that the window for effective action was closing rapidly. They chose to act now, betting that a physical setback to the program was more reliable than the uncertain promises of diplomacy, thereby seizing control of the timeline themselves. The immediate goals of the Israeli operation were clear and multifaceted. The primary objective was to inflict such severe damage on Iran's nuclear infrastructure that it would take years, not months, to recover. This involved targeting not just the physical sites where uranium enrichment takes place, but also the people who possess the critical knowledge. The assassination of key figures like Faridun Abbasi, a former head of Iran's Atomic Energy Agency, and the physicist Mohammad Mehdi Tehranji, illustrates a strategy aimed at decapitating the program's scientific leadership. Israel's attack was a comprehensive effort to destroy the hardware, the facilities, and the human expertise that together constitute a nuclear weapons capability. The global reaction has been a mixture of apprehension and tacit understanding, with Washington's position being particularly complex. While the U.S. administration initially sought to create distance from the unilateral Israeli strike, President Donald Trump later appeared to claim some credit, highlighting the tangled alliances and motivations at play. For the international community, the attack represents a failure of diplomacy and a dangerous escalation. The core issue remains whether this bold military gamble will truly neutralize the threat, or simply provoke a more secretive, more aggressive, and more determined Iranian effort to build a bomb, pushing the entire region closer to a wider and more devastating conflict. To understand if Israel succeeded, we must look at what it tried to destroy. A viable nuclear weapons program rests on three pillars: fissile material, the technology to enrich it, and the knowledge to weaponize it. Israel's strategy appeared to target all three. Reports indicate that numerous power stations, support buildings, and other infrastructure vital to the nuclear effort were destroyed. Furthermore, Israel's military claims to have severely degraded Iran's air defense systems, which were supposed to protect these sensitive sites. A successful outcome from Israel's perspective would mean the complete and verifiable destruction of Iran's advanced centrifuges and its entire stockpile of enriched uranium, especially the material enriched to 60% purity, which is perilously close to weapons grade. The attacks were widespread, aiming to create a systemic collapse of the program's key components. The reported strike on the deeply buried Fordow enrichment facility is particularly significant. Fordow was built into a mountain precisely to protect it from such an attack, and any damage there would represent a major intelligence and military achievement for Israel. Beyond the physical hardware, the targeted assassinations of senior scientists and military officials aimed to eliminate irreplaceable human capital. The loss of institutional memory and technical leadership can be just as debilitating as the loss of centrifuges. Destroying the equipment sets a program back, but eliminating the experts who know how to rebuild it is an attempt to stop it for good. Despite the dramatic reports, a thick fog of uncertainty hangs over the battlefield. Crucially, there is no independent confirmation that Israel managed to destroy Iran's stockpile of highly enriched uranium. If this material survived the attack, Iran retains the most difficult-to-produce ingredient for a bomb. The status of the centrifuges inside fortified sites like Fordow is also unconfirmed. If a significant number of these advanced machines remain operational, Iran could potentially reconstitute its enrichment activities relatively quickly, perhaps in a matter of weeks or months. The International Atomic Energy Agency has noted the attack, but has yet to provide a full assessment of what was destroyed and what survived. The gaps in our knowledge are what make this situation so tense. We do not know the full extent of the damage to Iran's command and control systems, or the morale of its scientific community. We are also unsure how much of the program's sensitive work may have been dispersed to secret, unknown locations that were not targeted in the strike. Intelligence agencies had previously assessed that even with enough fissile material, it would take Iran months to build a deliverable warhead. The central question now is how much this Israeli attack has extended that timeline. Without clear answers, judging the long-term success of the operation remains a matter of speculation. In the aftermath of the devastating attack, Iran finds itself at a critical crossroads with three divergent paths ahead. The first, and perhaps most expected, is a path of retaliation and accelerated nuclear pursuit. Hardliners within the regime will argue that the Israeli strike proves that diplomacy is a trap and that only the deterrent power of a nuclear weapon can guarantee the nation's security. This path would involve not only a direct military response against Israeli or American interests in the region, but also a public declaration to expel all International Atomic Energy Agency inspectors and dash toward a bomb. Iran could choose to retaliate through its proxies, creating instability from Lebanon to Yemen, while its scientists work in secret to avenge the attack by achieving the very outcome Israel sought to prevent. A second option for Tehran is to focus inward on reconstruction while maintaining a degree of strategic patience. This approach would involve publicly downplaying the extent of the damage to maintain domestic morale while quietly assessing the losses and beginning the arduous process of rebuilding. Iran could choose to retaliate in a limited, asymmetric fashion, perhaps through cyber attacks or covert operations, to save face without provoking an all-out war. Under this scenario, the nuclear program would go deeper underground, becoming even more opaque and fortified. Iran might calculate that a direct confrontation is too risky, and that its best strategy is to absorb the blow, learn from its defensive failures, and methodically reconstruct its capabilities for a future attempt. The third and least likely path is one of de-escalation and a genuine return to diplomacy. Some within the Iranian leadership might see the attack as a catastrophic failure of their current strategy, and argue that the price of nuclear defiance is simply too high. This faction could push for a renewed engagement with the international community, seeking security guarantees and economic relief in exchange for verifiable limits on its nuclear program. The Israeli attack, while intended to be punitive, could paradoxically create a political opening for pragmatists to argue for a different course. However, this path would require a monumental political shift in Tehran, as it would be seen by many as a surrender to enemy pressure. The choice Iran makes will be influenced by a complex mix of internal power struggles, economic pressures, and its assessment of the international response. The regime must weigh the burning desire for revenge against the sobering reality of its military and economic limitations. Each path carries immense risks. An aggressive response could trigger a wider war that devastates the country. A purely defensive posture might be interpreted as weakness, emboldening its enemies. A diplomatic turn could be viewed as capitulation. The world watches closely because Tehran's next move will not only determine the future of its nuclear program but could also ignite or extinguish the flames of a regional conflict. Ultimately, we are left with the fundamental question: can a military strike, however successful in the short term, truly stop a determined nation like Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons? History suggests that the answer is likely no. At best, the Israeli attack on June 12 has bought time. It has damaged infrastructure, disrupted timelines, and sown chaos within Iran's scientific establishment. It may have set the program back by several years. However, it has not erased the knowledge from the minds of thousands of Iranian scientists and engineers. You can bomb a building, but you cannot bomb an idea. The expertise to build a nuclear weapon, once acquired, is nearly impossible to eradicate. The Israeli strategy rests on the hope that this delay will be enough. Perhaps the interim period will allow for a change in the Iranian regime, or maybe renewed diplomatic efforts backed by the credible threat of more strikes will finally succeed. The attack serves as a powerful message that the path to a bomb will be fraught with peril and immense cost. Israel is betting that by repeatedly imposing these costs, it can convince Tehran that the pursuit is not worth the price. This strategy of mowing the lawn, as some analysts call it, aims to continually degrade Iran's capabilities, preventing it from ever reaching the finish line. It is a strategy of perpetual conflict management rather than conflict resolution. However, this approach is fraught with danger. Each attack risks a massive retaliatory spiral, drawing in the United States and other regional powers into a devastating war. Furthermore, such strikes can have the perverse effect of strengthening the resolve of the targeted nation. For Iran, the Israeli assault may serve as the ultimate justification for its nuclear ambitions, uniting the country behind the goal of obtaining a deterrent to prevent future attacks. A program that may have had ambiguous internal support could now become a national crusade, pursued with greater determination and secrecy than ever before. This is the great paradox of counter-proliferation strikes. They may delay a program while simultaneously making its eventual success more certain. The world is watching so closely because the outcome of this confrontation will set a crucial precedent for the 21st century. It will test the limits of military power in an age of diffused knowledge and technology. If Israel succeeds in preventing an Iranian bomb through force, it may encourage other nations to adopt similar preemptive strategies. If it fails, and Iran eventually emerges as a nuclear-armed state, it will signal the erosion of the global non-proliferation regime and likely trigger a cascade of proliferation across the Middle East. The Israeli strikes have not answered the Iranian nuclear question. They have only rewritten it in bolder, more urgent terms. The clock has been reset, but it is still ticking.